पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विष्णु भानु सुत देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we are discussing the 8th chapter, and today I believe we have to start from 8.6. So I'll share my screen in just a minute. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Right. So let's start with this first. You can repeat after me. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
tyajate ante kalevaram
tyajate ante kalevaram
tam tam evaiti kaunteya
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
sada tad bhava bhavitah.
tada tadbhava bhavitah.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
tyajate ante kalevaram
tyajate ante kalevaram
tam tam evaiti kaunteya
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
sada tad bhava bhavitah.
tada tadbhava bhavitah.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
tyajate ante kalevaram
tyajate ante kalevaram
tam tam evaiti kaunteya
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
sada tad bhava bhavitah.
sada tadbhava bhavitah.
Anyone else would like to recite the verse?
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
tyajate kalevaram
tyajate ante kalevaram
tam tamevaiti kaunteya
tam tam evaiti kaunteya
sada tadbhava bhavitah.
sada tad bhava bhavitah.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam
Yam
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 vapi
vapi
smaran
smaran
bhavam
bhavam
yajati ante kalevaram
tyajate ante
tyajate
kalevaram
kalevaram
tam tam evaiti konteya
tam
tam
tam evaiti
tamevaiti
kaunteya
kaunteya
sada tad bhava bhavitah.
sada tad
sada
bhava
tadbhava
bhavitah.
bhavitah.
Okay, so let's recite the synonyms. Yam yam,
Yam yam,
whatever.
whatever.
Vapi,
Vapi,
at all.
at all.
Smaran,
Smaran,
remembering.
remembering.
Bhavam,
Bhavam,
nature.
nature.
Tyajati,
Tyajati,
gives up.
gives up.
Ante,
Ante,
at the end.
at the end.
Kalevaram,
Kalevaram,
this body.
this body.
Tam tam,
Tam tam,
similar.
similar.
Eva,
Eva,
certainly.
certainly.
Aiti,
Eti,
gets.
gets.
Kaunteya,
Kaunteya,
O son of Kunti.
O son of Kunti.
Sada,
Sada,
always.
always.
Tat,
Tat,
that.
that.
Bhava,
Bhava.
state of being.
Excuse me, state of being.
Bhavita,
Bhavita,
remembering.
remembering.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Purport. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental state. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in his next life, he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer, he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Gopal. I'm sorry. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine. I read the translation one more time. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So this is the verse that talks about the law of last thought. So whatever a person remembers at the time of leaving the body, that state he will attain for sure. And there are examples for this in the scriptures. Prabhupada gives one example. Of course, there are other examples also. But before we discuss that, I want to talk a little bit about how did we reach at this point? What exactly had happened. So if you remember in the sixth chapter basically talked about Dhyan Yoga, where Krishna first encourages Arjuna to become a yogi. Tapasvibhyo adhiko yogi, jnanibhyo api mato adhikaha, karmibhyascha adhiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhava Arjuna. So he says that yogi is greater than ascetic, he is greater than a jnana yogi, he is greater than a fruitive worker. Therefore, under all circumstances, be a yogi, Arjuna. So that's how that is like the last but one verse of the sixth chapter. I think it's 46. And then right in the next verse, he puts a qualifier. He says, who is the best yogi? Yogi nam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shaddavan bhajate yamam same yukta tamomataha. He says, out of all the yogis, one who always thinks of me, he is the best yogi. So that's how the sixth chapter ends. The seventh chapter, Krishna talks. So in the sixth chapter, we remember that Arjuna he says that this is a very difficult thing. I cannot do this. This Dhyan Yoga process is extremely difficult for me. Why I'm giving this context is we'll discuss it when we come to the eighth chapter. But in the seventh chapter, then Krishna talks about an alternative way of fixing the mind on Krishna. Maya asakta manah partha yogam yunjan madashraya samshayam samagramam yatha gyasasi tat shrunu. So how by hearing about Krishna, the mind can eventually become attached to Krishna. So, and then he glorifies the knowledge about, knowledge that about Krishna, about himself that he's going to give to Arjuna. So the glory of that knowledge is described, and what in essence that knowledge is, that it is basically the different energies of Krishna. So Krishna's external energy, internal energy, and the marginal energy. So these three energies are described, and also how Krishna is eminent, in this material world. He is present in an eminent form, and he is the ultimate essence of our existence. He's the essence of everything. So now when he pervades the world, therefore different people reciprocate differently with Krishna. So some completely reject Krishna, they don't accept him, they don't surrender to him. What is that verse? Namam dushkritano mudha prapadyante nadaradhama. So they completely reject Krishna. Then there are devotees who approach Krishna with some motive, but at least they approach. So Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukriti no Arjuna. So that's how that verse comes. So these are the two extremes, and then there are people who are in between. So there are people who surrender to something else, or they fix their mind on something else. So the demigod worshippers, and then there are the impersonalists, So these are the different kinds of people that are described in the 7th chapter, and then Krishna kinds of ends that chapter by saying that if a person is thus fixed in Krishna's knowledge, even at the time of death, that person can attain Krishna he can actually remember Krishna at the time of their death. So he drops that hint to Arjuna that such a person who if he is fixed in my consciousness even at the time of death can remember me at the time of the death. So that kinds of gives an impetus to Arjuna. So he asks certain questions. So actually it's very significant, right? In just 2 verses, Arjuna asks about 8 or 9 questions to Krishna. So he asks, what is Brahman, what is self, what are the fruitive activities, what is this material manifestation, what are the demigods, and I mean some of these questions may sound a little, isn't it obvious what are demigods? So why is Arjuna asking that? But Krishna also, we'll see how Krishna answers. And then he also asks about who is the Lord of Sacrifice, and then the last question he asks is how can those engaged in your bhakti, they can know you at the time of death, remember you at the time of death. So this is one of the significant, this is the last question that Arjuna asks. And when Krishna answers these questions, what he does is he actually just answer the other questions in one or half of line, not even one full line, but he focuses on the last question, remembering at the time of the death. So in the 8th chapter, what is happening is, the reason I mentioned about the 6th chapter is, so remember in the third chapter, Krishna had talked about Jnana Yoga, and again he talks about Jnana Yoga in the 5th chapter. So in the 5th chapter, he compares Jnana Yoga with Karma Yoga. So he says actually Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga are the same. And he says that the same result that you get by Jnana Yoga, the same results you can also get by following Karma Yoga. Whereas Karma Yoga is easier than Jnana Yoga. Therefore, you do Karma Yoga. That's how he had put in the 5th chapter when he compares the two. Now, when the Dhyana Yoga is talked about in the 6th chapter, there is no exclusive comparison that has happened between the Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So that comparison between Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is going to happen in the 8th chapter. So the central theme of this chapter will remain remembering Krishna at the time of death, and then he will compare that, okay, you can remember me through Dhyana Yoga process, and you can also remember me through the Bhakti Yoga process. So now here in this 8th chapter, Krishna will not talk about pure Dhyana Yoga. He will talk about it is like Bhakti Mishra Dhyan. It is Dhyan contaminated, not contaminated, but it is mixed with Bhakti. That's how he'll compare. And then he'll also talk about pure Bhakti. And then he'll compare which is easier out of the two processes attaining, so tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginam, that verse will come where he will kind of conclude that through Bhakti I can be easily obtained. So that comparison is what is going to happen in the 8th chapter. So therefore now in these 3 verses, 8.5, 6 and 7, these are the essence of the 8th chapter. He's talking about the importance, what is the effect of remembering at the time of death, and what is the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of the death. So that is what is happening in the 8th chapter. Now in the 8.5 verse, if you remember, he had first mentioned Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nashti atra samshaya. One who remembers me alone at the time of, leaving his body, he attains my nature for sure. So that's what he had said in the 8.5 verse. Now, it may sound like Krishna is making a very big promise here to Arjuna, but in the next verse, he clarifies that actually this is just the application of a universal principle. And that universal principle is actually the law of last thought, that whatever state of being you remember at the time of the death, you will attain that state for sure. Therefore, if you remember me at the time of the death, you can attain me, my nature. That's how Krishna has put in the 8.5. Now, 8.6 is talking about that, the general applicability of that principle. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tejate ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Sada tad bhava bhavita. always that state of being, whatever you're remembering, that you will attain for sure. Now, something very interesting that is happening here is, we see that in at least in the first 5 or 6 verses, Prabhupada quotes the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Almost in every verse, he is quoting in full Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. He is not saying this chanting Hare Krishna. He is quoting the Hare Krishna mantra in full. And these verses 8.5 through 8.12 or 8.14, all these verses Prabhupada also quotes in the Bhishma Pitamaha section. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, 9th chapter is the departure of Bhishma Dev. So there, Prabhupada quotes all these verses. So this is, at least I consider 8th chapter to be very important. If a new person asks me that, I can only read 1 or 2 chapters of the Gita, which chapter should I read? So I always recommend 2nd and the 8th chapter, because 2nd chapter first gives the a basic platform, spiritual platform, that how we are not the body, we are the soul. And there is a good analysis that happens between the 2nd chapter, what is not spirit and what is spirit. So that gives a basic platform. And then 8th chapter is basically talks about the art of dying, and the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death. And there is also this question may come up, that why fix the mind on Krishna alone? You can fix on mind on so many other things. There are so many other demigods also. So to answer that, Krishna also he compares the essential nature of the material world and the spiritual world, that whatever is there in the material world, it is temporary. And then he talks about, he'll give a glimpse of the spiritual world for the very first time in the 8th chapter. So he'll talk about that, okay, there is another world, which exists beyond this material world, and that material world is permanent. It is never destroyed. Whereas this material world, it gets destroyed. Again and again, the creation and destruction happens in this material world. Therefore, everything that is there in this material world, including the demigods, they are all temporary. So therefore, it is the wise men, they should only fix their mind on Krishna. So that's how he's going to put it. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are examples of, there are cases mentioned. So Prabhupada quotes the case of Bharat Maharaj. Now, Bharat Maharaj is considered to be a very exalted devotee. And what happens in his case is that, we know that story. I'm not going to go into the full story, but he had renounced his kingdom, and he's pretty young. And after renouncing his kingdom, he has given it to his sons, and then he kinds of takes sannyas, is preparing himself to attain the spiritual abode. And then he lives in a jungle and is performing austerities. And it is mentioned that he has attained a very advanced stage. Acharya has mentioned that it is just one level below the perfection. And from that stage, because he remembered a deer at the time of death, he becomes attached to the deer. So what happens in his case is that he is a Kshatriya, and because the deer he thinks that the deer has taken his shelter, and he is duty bound to give him protection. So, but giving protection once is okay, that is fair. But then when he becomes attached to the deer, so much so that when he's performing his rituals, his practices, his sadhana, at that time also he's thinking of the deer. He is thinking that what would be happening to the deer, or if some other animal may have attacked the deer. So those kind of thoughts were bothering him all the time. And then eventually we know that he has an accident. He has a slip of foot, and then he fell down, and then he eventually has to leave the body. But at the time of leaving the body, he's thinking of the deer. So because he was thinking of the deer, then he gets the body of the deer. Now, one thing which interesting that happens is, we may think that, okay, he got the body of the deer, but his consciousness was not of the deer. So Krishna says that my devotee never perishes. So that principle also apply. So even though the principle of the law of last thought applied in his case, but the another principle is that if a devotee is there, then Krishna protects the consciousness. So his human consciousness, his devotional consciousness, his Krishna consciousness was protected by Krishna. And in the body of the deer, he could understand what had happened with him. He understood that, because he was very attached to the deer, and at the time of leaving the body, he was thinking of the deer. Therefore, he has got this body of the deer. And rather than, being enjoying the sweet green grass, he was actually living near a hermitage, and in the hermitage he was trying to associate with the sages, and he was listening to their whatever the different devotional activities they were performing, and he was eating the remnants, and therefore in the next body he gets the body of Jada Bharat. And from that body, because it was a human body, he had the opportunity to transcend again, and he did not let that opportunity slip away. And from that body he goes to the spiritual world. There's another story that comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the story of Puranjan. So Puranjan, so Pur means it is like a city. So the city that is talked about in that pastime is the city of the 9 gates, which is the body. This body has 9 gates. And Ranjan means one who enjoys in Pura. So he was enjoying in his body, and we know the story. He gets, so this is like a allegorical story that Narad Muni tells to Prachin Barahi. It's not a real story that is very clearly mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So because he was attached to his wife Puranjan, in the next life he gets the body of a woman. Of course, in the after that, he was a chaste woman in the next life, and then his husband was a king, and the king passes away, and then this Puranjan, who has now become a lady. I'm missing the name of the lady now. She's lamenting the loss of her husband. At that time, the Paramatma comes over there. The super soul manifests as an old sage, and he comes over there, and then he says, I am your friend. So that's how the pastime goes. And then basically what happens is his Paramatma comes and he revives his Krishna consciousness. So the point is that this principle is something that is mentioned even in the other scriptures, that how even if a person is a great devotee, if he's remembering something else other than Krishna, he will attain that state for sure. Also, psychologists, they have found out, they have done researches, and they have found out something interesting, that when a person is in pain, great pain, not just ordinary pain. Ordinary pain is, we might hurt our foot or cut our hand, or those are kind of ordinary cuts and bruises, etc. That's not what I'm talking about. But in great pain, something which is life threatening, or very close to life threatening pains. So at that time, the mind of the person goes to either of the two things. One is, either if he is attached to something, very dearly attached to something, the mind goes to that thing, or his mind goes to that thing, where that thing, that event, that relationship, that circumstance, where the person has found the greatest relief and shelter. So that is where the mind goes. That's what the person thinks at the time of the pain. So we know that at the time of leaving the body is in great pain. Both the pains are there. There is a pain that is caused by the physical condition. In one of the Upanishads or Purana, it is mentioned that when the soul is leaving the body, the pain is as much as like thousands of scorpions have bit the body. That is the kind of pain the body is undergoing at that time of death. And also, the body is taken away from the soul, forcibly. The soul is pulled out of the body. The soul doesn't want to leave the body because the soul associates itself with the body. So that is the dearmost thing for the soul, the body. Because everything else that is there, our health, wealth, children, family, that is all in relationship with the body. So when that body is being taken away by the soul, from the soul is also in great pain. So the body is in great pain and the soul is also in great pain. So therefore it is mentioned that by the acharyas that, we should, so that verse will come next, that, we should at least have, even though we may not be pure devotees, even though we may not be completely free from material desires, but at least we should come to a state where we have found our shelter in Krishna. So that is very important. If we can at least come to that state, then we can at least remember Krishna at the time of the death. So that's how Acharya has also mentioned. We can talk more about this in the next verse when we discuss, because these three verses, 5, 6, and 7, they are kind of linked together. So the 7th verse is also very important, where Krishna talks about practicing for remembering him at the time of the death. But before we go to the next verse, 8.7, are there any questions or comments or corrections about what I said? Anyone would like to add anything?
So I have a question. You said that our cumulative life is what we remember at the time of death, is what you said? So not just the momentary
What?
thought.
No, this is just like research done by psychologists, and
Mhm.
so not our cumulative life. They say that two things. One is either we are attached to something, very dearly attached to something, or
Mhm.
and it's not about the time of the death. At the time
Mhm.
of great pain, when the body
Mhm.
is in great pain,
Mhm.
either of the two things a person will remember. The mind goes to either the thing which we are very dearly attached to, that is one,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
that circumstance, that activity, that relationship, where we have found the greatest relief or shelter. So mind will go to that place.
Mhm.
So that's what they have found in their study or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I guess so. When we're in great distress, we call more upon God. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have given they give examples also, like for they say that, okay, if a boxer is there
Mhm.
and the boxer is, the other opponent has hit him very hard and he's in great pain, and if he
Mhm.
has found his greatest shelter in his mother, then his mind will go to his mother, even though he has his body and his muscles or everything is there. But when
Mhm.
the pain is too much, then the mind has, that is like the default working. That's how the mind works. That is like the default working of the mind.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry,
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
Mate.
No, go ahead.
So we understand also from the philosophical perspective that the subtle body is made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that the subtle body is a template for our previous lives and for our next life. So if we
Mhm.
want to know what we were in the previous lives, we can see what are our default thoughts. What is the when we don't have anything to do, or when we don't have anything to think, what do we think about at that time, or what is
Mhm.
the activity that we would like to do at that time when we don't have anything else to do. So that tells us, that is our default um, consciousness. That principle is also mentioned by Krishna himself in the 10th chapter. Matchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. Matchitta madgata prana. So Prabhupada very interestingly translates that as the thoughts of my devotees dwell with me. So what does it mean is, that Krishna, the dwelling means a place where we live. So Krishna becomes the home of the pure devotees. That means that we may have to go out from the home for some time for some work, but we eventually return back to our home. Similarly, the pure devotees, they may have certain things to do in the material world, but the default thoughts of the pure
Mhm.
devotees is Krishna. They always think about Krishna. This is also mentioned later in the 12th chapter. Indirectly Krishna says Aniketah sthir matir when he's talking about his pure devotees in the 12th chapter. 12.19, I think this verse is, where he says the pure devotees, they are Aniketa, they don't have any homes, but sthir matir, their mind is always fixed on Krishna. So
Mhm. But the cumulative thing kind of caught my attention because sometimes in the night I try, I'm thinking about Krishna, I'm reading about Krishna, I'm doing everything. I'm literally trying to like flood my mind with Krishna. And then I feel like, oh my God, it would be nice if I dreamt about Krishna. But then when I get up in the morning, I have these strange dreams which are nothing to do with Krishna.
hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So so something that you said caught my attention, that it was not necessarily that just before I'm going to bed I'm thinking about Krishna, I'm reading about Krishna, I'm listening about Krishna, everything, the cumulative thoughts of my day might make a difference too, is what brought to my attention when you said something like that, you know.
Yeah, that's true, Mataji. Yeah. It's not about what we do just before going to the bed.
Right. You said the cumulative life makes a difference too, you know, not just what you're thinking at the time of passing. But your other psychologist, experiment that you mentioned, that in times of great distress, you think about what gives you shelter, right?
Right.
And what gives you relief. Yeah. And I remember, like, when I was pregnant, my morning sickness was not just morning sickness. I had, like, it can be called, like, there's a name for that. It's almost like a disease. I threw up like constantly for a few months in a row. And I felt so sick. It is like, I thought to myself, how must a terminally ill person feel? You know what I'm saying? Because you're sick for a long period of time. But at least I know I'm going to get better. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't, I knew it was temporary at the time. But it gave me thought as to how this is how it must feel to be like so sick, you know. And I remember, of course, I called upon Krishna because we were raised, you know, with calling upon Krishna in times of distress. But at the same time, I was calling upon the name Mother too. I was saying Mata Krishna, Mata Krishna. And then I was trying to think that Krishna is my mother too, you know. But so in terms of times of distress, you do go to that, whatever gives you relief, you know, like you said, you know.
That's true, Mataji.
Yeah.
You're right.
And for a few months, I was literally like sleeping next to the toilet because I just was continuously, you know, sick.
And you're right that Krishna is also our mother. He says that.
Right.
I
I was thinking, why am I calling Mata? But I wanted that word Mata too. You know what I'm saying? There was something about that word that gave you some sense of relief when you were that sick, you know. But then I thought to myself, Krishna is my mother also, so it's okay for me to say that, you know, because I was getting upset that I was thinking of another word other than Krishna.
That is true, Mataji. Actually, I also remember once I was hospitalized. I was 14 or 15 years old. I had gastroenteritis, and you know, I couldn't retain anything in the body. Everything, even if I had one single drop of water, I would just throw it, you know, throw up.
Yeah.
And I was in great pain at that time. And I had all those, you know, syringes and everything going inside my body. I was completely dehydrated. And my father was there with me throughout. Mother was not there. And, you know, he was trying to rub my legs and he was asking me continuously, what should I do for you? Can I do something? And then I didn't say anything. I said, no, I'm okay. Just, you know, and then after, in the evening, my mom came to visit me with food. And then as soon as she came, I just picked up her hand and put it on my head like this. And my father was, well, I was here since morning. He's not doing this to me. But as soon as the mom came, you know, he's like, so I still remember that my father was, you know, he didn't like that. so
yeah, but when you're in distress, your automatic, you know, default goes to Krishna and whatever gives you relief. Yeah,
exactly. So at that time I was like a boy, you know, 14, 16 years, and all I had, you know, all the relief and everything came from mother only.
Yeah.
I was not too much into
that at 14 also. Yeah, mother makes the biggest difference. That's why we see of Mother Yashoda and Nanda Baba also, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, Krishna goes to his mother, not his father.
All right. Any other questions, comments, any realizations, corrections? Okay, if not, we can move on to the next verse. Let's just recite this verse once and then we can discuss it. Let me share my screen. Okay, you can repeat after me. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu.
Mamanusmara yudhyacha.
Mamanusmara yudhyacha.
Mai arpit mano buddhir.
Mai arpita mano buddhir.
Mame vashyasya samshayaha.
Mame vashyasi samshayaha.
Translation: Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Purport: this instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them at the same time. Think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna by chanting Krishna's names. One will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt. Translation one more time. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So here, Krishna is talking about how to remember him at the time of the death. So it is not a matter of, sometimes some people, when we preach to them and we tell them that, whatever state of being you remember at the time of death, that state you will attain for sure. Therefore, you must do bhakti so that you can, you can practice, and at the end of your life, you can think about Krishna. So sometimes we get arguments like, no, at the time of death, I'll think about Krishna. Don't worry about it. And some, I've also heard questions like, okay, yeah, we can have fun all the time, and once the juice of the life is gone, I can just pick up a gun and just put it on my head and just shoot the gun and say Hare Krishna. I'll go back to Krishna. So but Krishna is making it very, very clear here that tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, at all times. It's not about just, if we are not doing that, it will be very difficult and almost impossible for us to remember Krishna at the time of death, because it's not just a mere utterance of the word Krishna. It is smaran. Smaran means, and here he is saying anusmara. Anusmara means deep contemplation. Anu is like an adjective, and smara is remembrance. So deep remembrance, deep contemplation on Krishna. So it's not just a mere utterance of the word Krishna. It is more about trying to remember Krishna. So, if even if we say that we can do something like this, we can try to shoot us and ourselves and think about Krishna at a time, it's very unlikely that our mind will actually go to Krishna. And one is, we cannot cheat Krishna. Krishna says that amongst the cheaters, I am the great gambler. And the second is, our own conditionings, our own past lives, our own past karma. It's very unlikely that if we have not practiced devotional service throughout our life, we will be able to think about Krishna. So here, as I was mentioning, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. So first of all, Mam is Krishna, me. Anusmara, deeply contemplate on me, and then Yudhyacha. So the thinking about Krishna comes first, and then the activity comes here. Yudhyacha is like the occupational duty of Arjuna. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and his occupational duty is to fight. That is his career. That's what he do for his living. So Krishna is saying that he's not saying that you give up your occupational duty and just think about me. He's saying, and Prabhupada is also pointing it out in the purport, that the Lord does not recommend giving up the occupational duty. But what the Lord recommends is that always think about the Lord and then do your occupational duty. So now this Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha, think about me and then fight, this is certainly Bhakti Yoga. There is a similar verse that comes in the 3rd chapter, where it is mentioned in opposite way, where he says, Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyas Adhyatma Chetasa. So that is 3.30. So there, the point is that, do your work and offer the results of work to Krishna. So first, the first thing that comes over there is do your work, and then offer the results of your work to Krishna. That's how the verse comes. So that Chakravarti explains in his commentary that is like a lower level. First we, at the time of doing the work, or before the doing the work itself, the remembrance of Krishna or Krishna may or may not be there, but the person remembers to offer the results of the work to Krishna. But here, what Krishna is saying is that you first remember me, then do your work, or while doing your work, remember me. So that remembrance of Krishna has to be there constantly in the background. So that is a very important point. So this is the sign of a pure devotee. You had the example of who is that? Acharya, where this Kheer Chor Gopinath. Anyone remember the name of the Acharya? The Kheer Chor Gopinath pastime?
Madhavendra Puri Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, thank you. So Madhavendra Puri, when he saw that, this kheer was being made, and he was thinking in his mind, how nice it could be that, if I could taste this kheer and, I could offer the same kheer to, my deity. So, and then, I mean, immediately he becomes a little embarrassed that how could I think like that? But the whole purpose of him thinking to be able to taste the kheer was so that he can understand what the ingredients are, and then he can then offer that kheer to his his lord. So that is like first class devotion. Even before the thing is being cooked, he has already offered it to to Krishna in his mind, that I want to offer this to Krishna, therefore I want to taste this kheer so that I can make this very tasty kheer and offer it to Krishna. So similarly here Krishna is saying that you always remember me, first remember me and then fight. And then he says, Mai arpit mano buddhir. So this is the central point of Krishna consciousness, according to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita that the art of Krishna consciousness is a total absorption of mind and intelligence in Krishna. Let us quickly read what Srila Prabhupada says exactly. I have that pulled up here. I'll share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
So this is the excerpt from the introduction to the Gita, where Prabhupada says, we work not with our body actually, but with our mind and intelligence. So if the intelligence and the mind are always engaged in the thought of the Supreme Lord, then naturally the senses are also engaged in service. Superficially, at least, the activities of the senses remain the same, but the consciousness is changed. The Bhagavad Gita teaches one how to absorb the mind and intelligence in the thought of the Lord. Such absorption will enable one to transfer himself to the kingdom of the Lord. If the mind is engaged in Krishna's service, then the senses are automatically engaged in his service. This is the art, and this is also the secret of Bhagavad Gita, total absorption in the thoughts of Sri Krishna. So again, this part here, Mai arpit mano buddhir, mam evashyasya samshaya, that if you offer your mind and intelligence to me, you will surely come back to me. This will come again later. In the 12th chapter, Krishna says, Mai arpit mano buddhir, yomad bhakta same priyaha. Such a devotee who has offered his mind and intelligence to me, such a devotee is very, very dear to me. In the 12th chapter, 12.16, I believe, if I'm not wrong. So this is like the art of Krishna consciousness. Our mind has to be absorbed in Krishna. And this is also mentioned in the 7th chapter, first verse. Maya asakta manah partha yoga minjan madashrayana. Make your mind attached to me. So that is a central theme. This is also talked about in a different way by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he is giving instructions to Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, he says, he gives the example of an unchaste woman, that, if an unchaste woman who has a paramour other than the husband, so the body of the woman is with the husband, but the mind is with the the paramour. She's always thinking about her lover, and how can I be with my lover, so the point of giving that example by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that, just as an unchaste woman thinks about her paramour, although she's doing all her work in the husband's home, similarly the devotee, being in this material world, they can do their work in the material world, but the mind should always be with Krishna. The heart should always be with Krishna, because we are where our mind is. If I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about what's happening in India, what is my family doing there, so I'm actually not here, I'm there, because my central awareness is, this what I'm doing here right now will become my peripheral awareness. But my central awareness, because my mind is thinking about something else, that would become my central awareness, because my mind is what creates awareness for me. So we are where our mind is. Therefore, this principle that, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhacha, mai arpit mano buddhir mam evashyasya samshaya. This is like a practice that Krishna is asking us to do. That if we can do this practice, this abhyas, and the word abhyas will come in the next verse. I don't think we'll have time to discuss that. That way we will be, if we can do abhyas like this, then at the time of the death, at the time of leaving the body, we can surely be able to remember Krishna. So the word abhyas will again come later in the 12th chapter. In the same context, Krishna will say, abhyas yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. He says, therefore, Arjuna, develop a desire to attain me. Practice to develop a desire to attain me. That's how Krishna will put it. So let me stop here and see if there are any questions or any points. Anyone would like to add anything? Any questions, comments, anything anyone would like to add?
So how do you offer your mind and intelligence completely?
Yeah,
Arpita
Prabhupada.
Maya Arpita, it says.
So Prabhupada says that by chanting Hare Krishna, so we
Okay,
have
easy
to.
answer.
But there are
Perfect.
different, there are different ways. One is there are. So either we can think about the name, fame, qualities, of Krishna. That is one. A name is basically chanting the names of the Lord. Fame and qualities and listening his pastimes. That is one way. And the other way is to think about our service for Krishna. We may have different services that we do for Krishna, and we can think about how can I improve my service for Krishna. Because that is also a way to remember about Krishna. Or if we are not doing any service for Krishna, then we can think about what is the service that I can do for Krishna. So these are some of the ways in which we can offer our mind and intelligence to Krishna. So if we can if we can be fixed in one or multiple of such activities, then that is the way we can offer our mind and intelligence to Krishna. Some people are directly writing for Krishna. They are writers. They write for Krishna. So that is the perfect way, because when we are writing for Krishna, like Srila Prabhupada is writing so many books. So he has to contemplate, he has to think about it. What is he going to write? What is he writing in the book? So definitely his mind and his intelligence both are thinking about Krishna. I think Jiva Mataji, need to go on mute, Mataji. We are hearing a lot of background noise.
I want you to look at it and see if we should keep it. I would paint it. It needs paint. It was already painted.
I don't know if they can hear us.
Yeah. So, but did that answer your question, Mataji?
Yeah. I mean, and it says like in those 9 processes of bhakti, even if a couple of them, if you do, then you're surrendering your mind and intelligence, right?
Yeah, that is what definitely that is the case. If you are engaged in a positive way, in a sense that we are relishing that activity, either of those 9 processes, that is the best. If we can relish either one of multiple of such activities, the 9 activities which are mentioned. The other way is, as I was, Naam Dhyan, Leela Dhyan, Gyan Dhyan, if we can remember the instructions of Krishna that is given in the Bhagavad Gita or in other scriptures where Krishna is directly giving instructions, or our Seva Dhyan for Krishna, the service that we do for Krishna. So these are some of the ways that are mentioned by the devotees.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, any other comments, corrections? Anyone like to add anything?
He's able, even though his mind is very able to be quiet.
I know, I was thinking the same thing.
I didn't hear.
Okay, if not, then maybe we can stop here. So Geetamala Mataji, wish you a very happy birthday. Happy Krishna conscious birthday.
Tomorrow's birthday today.
I think I've gotten enough blessings from enough people, so thank you so much.
It's your birthday today?
Yes, Paco.
Happy
Oh,
birthday
please.
to
No, we don't sing happy birthday.
Geetamala. Happy birthday to Geetamala. Happy birthday to you. Happy
Thank you.
birthday to you. And may Krishna bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
We
I
have
had to
Krishna
do that.
version
I'm
of
sorry,
happy birthday.
guys. I didn't know. I just found out.
That's fine. We have Krishna version of happy birthday song. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna to you. Hare Krishna to you. Hare Krishna Geetamala Mataji. Hare
Krishna
Krishna
to
to
you. Hare
May you
Krishna.
never take birth
Birth
again.
again. May you never take birth again. Happy birthday
Never
to
take
you.
birth again. Go
Happy
back, back, Godhead. Go back home, back to Godhead. Go back home, back to Godhead.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope all your wishes come true.
Now we have
They
to count.
will.
We have to
Huh?
start the countdown now. 1, 2, 3. Are you one? Are you?
We'll be here forever. Vrinda and Tulsi, Vrinda, Radhika and Tulsi, nice singing. So I should be like my granddaughter. My granddaughter was so cute. When everybody was singing happy birthday to you, she goes like happy birthday to me. So I should say Hare Krishna to me. So thank you everyone. This has been great association with all of you.
So Mataji, come
So-
to the point now. When is the party and where is it?
When is the party? Is it? At this point, somebody else has to give me a party.
Right?
Well, we'll see one of these days. But now
Sure.
winter is coming, right?
Yes. Okay, Mataji, I wish you.
Yeah,
I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually
I mean-
really enjoyed my day right from the Zoom morning call. He said Gajendra prayers today early in the morning. And
That's
somehow it was my turn. So I had got the opportunity to sing and chant and do everything today.
Hmm.
So see, that's what it says when you're hanging out with devotees. It always turns out to be a perfect day, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining the meeting.
Vancha
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhyubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Hare Krishna,
Ganpati Gauranga ki
Hare
jai.
Krishna,
Hare
Prabhupada ki
Krishna,
jai.
everyone.
Hare Krishna.